All right, are you curious what's inside of this pump? Me too, so I'm gonna take it apart and see what it looks like. I doubt I can fix it, but it never hurts to take a look. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to Speedy's Garage. I've been getting asked lately about Project SportRunner, why you guys haven't seen it. And honestly, it's because it's pretty much a completed project. We did the supercharger, the 7th injector, the piggyback computer, all of that was done way before there was even a YouTube. So I've had that truck almost 20 years, and so we did all of that probably 12 or 15 years ago. We recently put water meth injection on the 4Runner and got that squared away, and there is a video to that, and I'll link that to the top. But other than normal maintenance items, there's really just not a lot left to do to that vehicle. It runs great. We got the Tundra TRD suspension on it. We got the Tundra brake upgrade on it. So there's just not a lot left to do other than normal maintenance items, and that's what we've got to take care of today. But we're also doing a little bit of work on Go Man Go, and it is taking up the shop. So we're gonna have to work on Project SportRunner over in the other garage. Not quite as bright and easy to work in as this, but sometimes you just got to get it done. So I've loaded up the tool cart with a few things I think I'm going to need. Got some ratchets, my cordless ratchet that I love to use, screwdriver, lights, and my socket set. And if you don't have a tool cart, I highly recommend you get one. It's nice for when I need to go over to the other garage. I can just take the tools with me on the cart. But when I'm even working in the shop, it's nice to just be able to have all the tools that I need right there by the vehicle that I'm working on. And I save a bunch of time walking across the shop and back and forth. So I usually load up the cart with everything I think I'm going to need. You've got shelves where you can put your parts as you're working on them. You can stash those there, and it'll just save you a lot of walking back and forth time. It not only cuts the time down, but it cuts the fatigue down as well. You're not walking across your shop. So if you don't have one of these, they're not very expensive. You can get them from several places. This one is actually an inexpensive one. I think it came from Harbor Freight, and I think it was like 70 bucks or something like that, and it is worth its weight in gold. All right, so let's get over here and get to work on Project SportRunner, get this thing squared away. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a repair to make today, I think. As I mentioned, we did put water meth injection on this vehicle, and that allowed us to go to a, I think it's a 2.1, yeah, 2.1 inch pulley on the supercharger, and it raised the boost up to 10 or 11 PSI. But that's because the water meth injection system is cooling the intake charge and adding some additional octane. It's probably 110 octane or so when it's actually active. What I started to notice, and when you do something like this, you want to monitor things. And so I've got a scan gauge on the steering column. I keep an eye on timing. The air fuel is obviously in the truck on an air fuel gauge. A wideband is in the exhaust system. And then we've got the actual cooling mist, CMGS, I don't remember what that stands for, controller. And I started noticing the timing wasn't as much. I could feel a little bit of a decrease in power. And so I thought something might be going on. And so I just started doing some testing, and I started monitoring the washer fluid bottle to see if I was using fluid when the system was active, the water meth system. And I started noticing that the fluid actually was not decreasing in the tank. And so I started wondering if there was something wrong with the system. I started running some tests, and as you saw when I did the install, and I linked to that earlier, the install of the water meth system, there's a way you can set the controller to have the pump actually prime and activate, and you can control it with the little knobs on the controller and see if it's spraying. And what I found is that the system was not working any longer. And that's not a huge deal on one of these 4Runners. It's not making a ton of boost. 11 pounds isn't a ton. These engines are pretty bulletproof, and the way the tuning is set up in them, they will actually pull timing and protect themselves quite aggressively, actually. So I was used to seeing something like 18 or so degrees, maybe 19 degrees of timing when I was wide open throttle. And I started seeing it be like 12 degrees or 13 degrees, and I could feel that power loss. And so I pay attention to that kind of stuff when you're modifying a car. You really want to kind of keep an eye on a few extra things since it's not stock anymore. And so I noticed that, and I started troubleshooting, and what I think has happened is either the solenoid or the pump in the system has gone bad. Now, interestingly, I called Cooling Mist, and it seems like their number's out of order. I sent them an email and I never heard back, and I reached out to them on Facebook and they never responded. So my gut says that they are no longer in business. However, Devil's Own is another water meth injection company, and what you'll find is a lot of the parts are pretty much the same. The pumps are about the same, the components are about the same. Now each one will say that they do something a little bit better than the other, and they might have something they've done with the nozzles to make them spray a smaller droplet or something like that, but the components for the most part are pretty close to the same setup. So if I need something, I'll just reach out to them to get it. And on this truck, if you remember, I've got the pump mounted behind the front bumper. So we're going to take the bumper off. I'm not going to show you all that. I've been through it before. We're just going to get right after it. If you want to go back and see how I did it, go back and check out the video where I did the install. But for now, we're just going to get straight to troubleshooting. So I've got the front bumper off. I've gone ahead and removed the pump. I did determine that was what was wrong, and I'll tell you how I did that. I drained the fluid from the reservoir. I used the factory washer fluid as my meth injection reservoir. So I drained that. When you remove the bumper, be sure you don't forget to disconnect the turn signal and the fog light if you have it. That was the only thing there. It's like 4 bolts or 6 bolts. Very easy to do. Remove the reservoir, like I said, drain that. And what I did is I had Miss Speedy come out, and hopefully you can see here, there's a solenoid, and that activates the pump. So they work together. So the solenoid opens, it allows fluid to flow, and I thought at first it would be the solenoid. So I had Miss Speedy kind of key the ignition on and off, and turn the valve or the switch on the meth injection controller, and I put my hand on the solenoid and I could feel it click. So I was pretty sure that wasn't the problem. However, I wouldn't hear the pump run. I would just hear it kind of whine. And so I went ahead and clipped that, pulled it off. Now we're going to test it to make sure that's what our problem is. So here's the suspected culprit. This is the cooling mist pump. And like I said, they're all pretty much the same. It's a DDP 5800. When I keyed the system on, or Miss Speedy keyed it on, she was helping me. I could hear it whine, but it didn't sound very healthy. So what I've done is I've got my power probe out. The nice thing about this is you can connect it up and I can give it 12 volts. So we'll know for sure if that's our problem. So we got the ground connected. We're gonna give it some voltage. It definitely should not sound like that. So it sounds kind of grindy. I suspect there's a problem with one of the bearings or something inside of it. So we're gonna disassemble it just to take a look and make sure it's not something simple that I can fix, but I suspect this pump has just gone bad. And if you don't have a power probe, I highly recommend you get one. I use it all the time. This one is version 4. I don't know what version's out now, but I'll leave a link in the description to where I bought this one if you're interested in having something like this. It's very nice because you can test electrical components outside of the vehicle's power system. Basically, this draws power from a 12-volt battery, and then it can apply voltage, it can check resistance, it can check a whole bunch of stuff. And so a great tool. If you don't have one in your toolbox, I recommend you get one. All right, are you curious what's inside of this pump? Well, me too. So I'm going to take it apart and see what it looks like. I doubt I can fix it, but it never hurts to take a look. It says this one was manufactured October 20th of 2015, so it's about 3.5 years old. I would have expected it to last a little bit longer than that, but maybe this one had a defect. But let's get it open and take a look. First thing I see is some corrosion on the bolt. That's not a good sign. Corrosion on that one too. There's the contact. So it's an electromagnet basically. There's a coil in here. That bearing feels okay. Ooh, found our problem. Woo! Yeah, that ain't. Hear that? Can you see that? It's all rusted and nasty. Let's get a light on it. Yeah, this thing is shot, so it appears some water got in. Remember me telling you guys they had drilled and tapped the housing for the bracket. So you can see there, I see some signs that water may have gotten in through those holes. The pump is mounted upside down, so it drained down and it sat on top of that bearing, and it's really rough as you can hear. So that pump is shot. We're gonna have to order us a new pump, but at least now we know what the problem was. And if you're curious how this thing works, there's 2 great big magnets inside the housing, and then you got your coil on a bearing here. And basically it energizes through the top and it causes this to spin. And then the magnets get it spinning faster and faster and faster. And when it spins, there's a shaft that goes through the bottom, and that's what creates your pumping action. It draws in one side and pushes out the other through a series of valves that are inside of here. It's just little plastic, look like little plastic valves. It's hard to, I mean, that's really what they are. They're in a little plastic housing. And that's all there is to it. So a very simple design, and should last a very long time and run great unless you get water in it and it seizes up the bearing. And that looks like about the only failure point I can find on that. And through the magic of YouTube video editing, the replacement pump is already here. I did put some RDV around it to seal it up to prevent water from getting in it again. And I should have done this when I installed it originally, but I didn't have any weather pack connectors, but I do now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare the pump with a weather pack connector, and then the other end obviously go on the vehicle. And that way, if we ever need to service the pump again, it's just a simple unplug, do our repair, whatever we need to do, our maintenance, and then plug it back in. So you want to pay attention to these weather pack connectors. You've got a male side and a female side, and the pins are specific to the side you're working on. And I also like them because they have these, I believe they're silicone. You would say rubber, but I believe they're silicone grommets that go in and will completely seal this up and make it waterproof. So now we're going to go ahead, get that set up on the pump, and then get it installed back on Project SportRunner. Okay, so as you saw, we got our pins installed. Pay attention to the orientation. You'll have a little piece of paper that usually comes with the weather pack connectors that tells you how to line them up in the connector. And then we're just gonna make sure everything feels right. Lock them into place. Do not forget the little grommets, because they're gonna slide down to seal it up. And there's the finished product. Nice professional connection. Now, obviously you could do this with butt connectors. I had a gentleman who was an electronics guy a long time ago teach me about using professional looking connectors on my projects, and it's just a nice little touch to make things look like they're OEM. And so for what these cost, I think this whole bag was like $6. For what these cost and how easy they are to use, and you do need a special crimping tool, as I showed you a minute ago how to use that. It makes the crimps nice and neat. I used to do it with just a pair of needle nose pliers, and it was a little bit of a headache. This makes it super easy, and I think this tool was about $14. And I also use a professional wire stripping tool, but you could do that with anything. But again, gives you that nice professional look. With that done, we just got to go do the one on Project SportRunner and get this thing connected back up. So we got the pump remounted, ready to go. We got it connected to the solenoid on the supply side, or I'm sorry, on the draw side. And we connected up our weather pack connector. So now all that's good to go. We're gonna get the washer fluid reservoir reinstalled, and we're gonna run a test. All right, we got everything hooked up, but before I fill it with fluid, I'm gonna run a test. And I always keep a cheat sheet of the equipment I'm using in the vehicle it's on, in case I'm traveling or something. I might not remember, and I might not have internet access to get to it. So I remembered back, taking a look at this cheat sheet, we need to key the ignition on, and then we can set the controller into like maintenance mode where we can test the pump. So that's what I'm going to do real quick before I put fluid in. So we're going to key the ignition on.
Testing. System ready. Voice alert.
Let it cycle up. All right, we set both knobs to 0, and it'll count backwards from 5. Now we're in maintenance mode. And what I'm going to do is turn the right knob until the LEDs across the top light up the 6th bar. Let's see, that's 3, 4, 5, 6. And now I should be able to turn this and hear the pumps run. And it does. So now we're going to put fluid in and give it one final test. And you'll remember, this is my own mixture of fluid. It's the -25 SuperTech windshield washer fluid. It says de-icer on it, and I think it's about 30-35% methanol. And then I add an 8-ounce bottle of heat to the mixture to bring up that methanol content. So this is what I've been using, and it works pretty good. So there we go. Looks like we got the problem solved. We got fluid in our cup, so we know that the pump is working. So we're going to hook everything back up, go for a test drive. And it is nice to have the horsepower back. Okay, so mission accomplished. We've got the problem corrected, and a lot of people ask me, why haven't I put meth injection on Go Man Go, our Hellcat? And the reason is exactly what we saw today. I was told years ago by a performance shop that these meth injection systems can have some potential problems, and if you have a turbo car or something like that, they have some safeties that you can set up that'll open a bypass valve or a wastegate or can activate a solenoid, but those things get even more complex, and so I'm a keep it simple, stupid kind of guy, and so I try to keep things as simple as I possibly can. On this 4Runner, the way the tuning is set up on it, you can't control the timing directly. You have to control the timing, the ignition timing, indirectly. And the way you get performance out of these trucks and cars is, at least the older ones, you make the engine not have any knock. And if the engine doesn't have any knock, then the computer will add timing all on its own. And that's why a meth injection system works so well on a supercharged 4Runner, a third generation. Basically, you're adding octane and a cooling effect, which reduces any potential for knock, and you can zero out your timing map. And on these trucks, you have to pull timing. You can't add timing, but you can remove it through a little piggyback computer. And before I had the meth injection on here, I was having to pull 5 or 6 or 7 degrees of timing to keep it from having any ping or detonation. And since putting the meth injection system on, I was able to zero out that timing map. And so basically the truck will get 18, 19, I just saw 20 degrees of timing at wide open throttle, and so you're adding all of that performance back. So on the Hellcat, you can control the timing directly, and you want to be very careful there if you're putting meth injection on one of those types of cars. You can burn up an engine pretty quick. If I'd had that pump failure, let's say we had tuned the Hellcat to run meth injection and we were tuning it to actually take advantage of the meth injection system, so that means we're adding more timing in because we're getting more cooling and more octane, and then all of a sudden the pump quits working, well, you're going to blow your motor up. On a 4Runner, on these 2002 third gens, it'll just pull timing out because from the factory you can't control, or from the factory they're locked and you can't control the timing in the PCM, at least not that I've ever found out about. If you know that I can, or there's a way to do that, let me know, but without a piggyback or some kind of standalone, I don't think you can do that. So that's the reason that I haven't put the meth injection system on the Hellcat. And some people say, well, the Hellcat has knock sensors too. Well, yeah, that's right, but I think the way these 4Runners were set up, they're a little bit more aggressive with the way they pull timing. I mean, I don't know, but a lot of people have done this for years and years and years, and I've been running it on this truck for a long time as well. Hopefully we don't have any more issues with pumps, but the first one lasted 3.5 years, so not terrible. I think it was about $140 to replace it, so a little bit of expense there, but not too bad. Well, for those of you that have been missing Project SportRunner, there you go. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Be sure to check us out on Instagram. It's at Speedys_garage, as well as our website, www.speedysgarage.net. And stay tuned, because next week we're back on Go Man Go.